So Joburg Pride was this past weekend, and if you know anything about Pride season in Johannesburg, it sometimes feels like a New Year's Eve bash and a protest came together and had a baby. It's glitter, it's resistance, it's traffic all over Sandton, all in one unapologetic sentence. This year's Joburg Pride, the 36th, can you believe it, hit the streets with the theme purely, queerly African. Now, if that sounds bold or even like a mouthful, it's because it is. That phrase alone could start an argument at a dinner table, a sermon, and a TED talk simultaneously. But that's the point, isn't it? Pride, in all its messy, magnificent contradictions, is about tension, joy and protest, sparkle and substance, corporate float and homemade banner. It's us saying we're here, we're queer, and we're not apologizing. And maybe that's why we keep coming back for that electric moment between the music and the meaning, where you don't know whether to laugh, cry, or start another chant. Because somewhere in that noise, something inside you shifts. You realize pride isn't just a weekend, it's a heartbeat. And if you listen closely, it's asking you, what part of you still needs to be seen? It's Wednesdays. Hello, 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 my loves. Queers, straights, the curious in between, lovers, and anyone else just listening. Welcome back to yet another episode of Wednesdays with Woody. I almost forgot the name of the show. Can you believe it? To yet another episode of Wednesdays with Woody, where we are interrupting your midweek chaos with a little introspection, some chaos, and a healthy dose of gay panic. Today we're unpacking Joburg Pride 2025, the celebration, the critique, and the deeper question. What does it mean to be purely, queerly African in a world that still tells us queerness is imported? So let's set the scene, shall we? The streets of Sandton filled with drag queens, balancing stilettos like Olympic athletes, queer couples holding hands under the blazing October sun, and a DJ booth blasting Amapiano so hard you can feel your soul leave your body briefly before coming back for another drink. It was massive, possibly one of South Africa's biggest prides ever. And yet, it wasn't without drama. Some folks, leading up to Pride, called for a boycott. There were rumors about rainbow washing, accusations that Pride had become more about corporate branding than queer liberation, nothing new there. And look, I get it. When any organization really slaps a rainbow on its logo while still denying queer people loans, access, representation, or recognition, the math just doesn't add up. But here's the tension. Pride has always been both celebration and confrontation. It's a protest in heels, a revolution with choreography. And in a country where homophobia still wrecks lives every other week, the sight of thousands of queer bodies taking up space in broad daylight, that's powerful. That's visibility. That's survival dressed in sequins. And yet, walking through that crowd, between the drag, the dance, and the dust, I realized pride isn't just about showing up. It's about staying visible when the world gets tired of looking. Every year, we risk becoming background noise in a culture that wants our glitter, but not our grief. Pride, at its best, refuses to let that happen. You can feel it in the air, the laughter, the sweat, the side eyes at exes you thought moved to Cape Town. There's a sacred chaos to it, the kind that says we survived another year. For one day, we're not statistics or hashtags. We're joy incarnate. strutting through Johannesburg traffic with rhinestones and resistance. Now, let's talk about this rainbow washing situation. Nogoberg Pride, shout out to the brave ones, raised some uncomfortable questions. Can Pride truly be radical if it's brought to you by brands who only remember the LGBTQIA+ community when it's marketing season? And as someone who works in marketing comms and branding, I can tell you the Rainbow Gradient has made its way into some KPIs. You know it's Pride Month when your favorite fast food joint starts tweeting in drag. And here's the nuance. Visibility still matters. A billboard can't liberate you, but it can make a 13-year-old queer kid in Limpopo feel seen. Still, the question remains, at what point does visibility become commodification? When does representation start feeling like exploitation with a glow filter? That's something I wrestle with every day as a creator. How do I stay visible without becoming a product? How do we keep Pride powerful when it risks becoming predictable? Maybe the answer isn't to reject the spectacle, but to reclaim its purpose. To remember that Pride was never meant to be polished. It was meant to be public, uncomfortable, defiant, loud enough to drown out the silence we were raised in. And look, I love a good float. I love a well-lit selfie. But sometimes I wish brands would put their money where their hashtags are. Fund queer shelters. Sponsor trans healthcare. Give back off-season. The rainbow shouldn't fade once the campaign ends. Because what's the point of waving a pride flag if your workplace still punishes people for who they love? True allyship isn't seasonal. It's sustained. It's messy, inconvenient, and very real. And that's exactly what we need more of. Now, this theme, purely, queerly, African, it did something to me. It's provocative for sure. It's a declaration and a dare. Because for years, queerness in Africa has been framed as un-African. As though colonialism didn't arrive here carrying imported laws criminalizing same-sex love. Like queerness just floated in through customs with a European passport. Please. But history tells a different story. In pre-colonial Africa, queerness was woven into life itself. Woman and woman marriages existed long before Igbo. There was a gender-fluid monarch in Angola, and in some oral traditions, you'll find stories of same-sex partnerships and non-binary spirits. We were always here, before the Bible, before the binaries. And yet, many of us were raised in households where being queer meant being foreign, where we had to perform straightness to be considered respectable, growing up in contradiction, loving who we were but always being told it didn't belong here. And that's why I think I love this year's theme. It's a reclamation. It's saying you can't out-African me just because I'm gay. To be purely queerly African is to remember that queerness isn't imported, it's indigenous. It's part of the soil, the rhythm, the storytelling. And every time we show up in our truth, we're not betraying our culture, we're restoring it. And I think that's what's missing from the global conversation. Too often, Africa is painted as homophobic, as if that's the whole story. But there are also queer pastors, lesbian farmers, trans healers, entire worlds of quiet, beautiful defiance that never trend, but never stop existing. That's the power of purely, queerly African. It's not about fitting in. It's about belonging differently. And honestly, the rest of the world could take notes. Because while they debate pronouns on television panels, we're out here turning survival into art. We've always done that. Built beauty out of chaos. That's the African way. Now, before we pat ourselves on the back for being progressive, Let's zoom out just a little. The Institute for Strategic Dialogue released a report just last week showing that homophobic and transphobic rhetoric is rising again, globally. From the West to Africa, queer rights are slipping. And the irony, it's happening in countries that already have laws protecting LGBTQIA+ people. Because legal equality is not lived equality. You can't legislate kindness. You can't sign a bill that makes someone stop glaring at you in public bathrooms. The law can decriminalize your existence, but it can't make the world safe enough for you to exhale. In South Africa, we're lucky. On paper, we have one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. But tell that to the lesbian women still being murdered in townships. Tell that to the trans South Africans still fighting for healthcare access. We can't mistake policy for progress. The paperwork is done, but the work is far from over. And when you think about it, the West isn't that different. They may have marriage equality, but hate crimes are still rising. Trans people are still being legislated out of existence. Bigotry just found better PR. The truth is, equality isn't a finish line. It's maintenance. It's everyday work. It's calling out your uncle's jokes, hiring inclusively, protecting each other in ways laws can't. Pride shouldn't stop when the parade ends. It should evolve into daily solidarity. That's the revolution we still owe each other. For me, pride is both personal and political. It's about being seen, but also seeing others. Visibility doesn't end with a selfie at Pride. It begins with how we show up for each other when the cameras are gone. And yet, even as we fight for inclusion, we have to be careful not to turn Pride into a purity contest. Not every queer person wants to march, wear glitter, or post a rainbow flag. Some are just trying to exist quietly, and that's okay too. We can't fight for freedom while policing how it looks. Being purely, queerly African means embracing contradictions. It's knowing we can celebrate progress while still demanding more. It's understanding that joy is not ignorance. It's resistance. But I'll be honest, being visible takes work. Some days I wake up and I don't want to explain myself again. I don't want to perform the teachable moment. I don't want to be brave. And I know I'm not alone in that. Visibility is beautiful, but it's also exhausting. That's why community matters. Because when one of us needs to rest, the rest of us can keep marching. It's also why Pride can't just be about us. It has to include the voices still being silenced, the queer refugees, the rural youth, the elder who fought before hashtags. Pride should expand our empathy, not just our wardrobe. So maybe the next phase of Pride isn't about bigger sound systems or better branding. Maybe it's about rewriting the story, literally. Remembering that queer Africans have always existed, and that will exist long after hashtags. To reclaim queerness as African is to take back authorship. To say, we belong here. We've always belonged here. And we're not asking for permission anymore. As a writer, as a creator, I think that's what I've been trying to do, to reclaim the narrative through color palettes, through words, through sound, all of it. I want my work to feel like home, to remind people that queerness isn't a performance, it's a perspective. But here's the thing. Reclaiming doesn't mean excluding. It's not about gatekeeping identity or deciding who's queer enough. It's about remembering that liberation isn't limited. The more voices we amplify, the more powerful we become. Maybe that's what purely, queerly African really means. Not purity as exclusion, but as clarity. A deep knowing of who we are, stripped of the noise. And in that knowing, we create space for others to arrive. As they are, however they are. In all the celebration and vibrant colours, I thought about a quote. We're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere, and we will not apologize. I'm not sure about that second part, but let's just roll with it. I felt that in my bones. Because every pride, whether it's a protest or a party, is an act of defiance against erasure. And maybe that's the lesson of Joburg Pride 2025. Hell of any pride this year. It doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. It just needs to exist. Because visibility, even when messy, is still magic. And when the glitter settles and the noise fades, what's left is belonging. Raw, real, and renewable. Pride is temporary, but community is permanent. We build it every time we show up, laugh loudly, or simply refuse to shrink. So, wherever you are, whether you're out loud or quietly queer, just know this. You don't owe the world your perfection, only your presence. This has been Wednesdays with Woody, your midweek dose of heart, humor, and a little history. And remember, pride isn't seasonal, it's daily, and it's ours. Till we meet again next week, my loves. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm wishing you guys lots of love, light, and happiness, or joy, or whatever peace you can find as the week carries on. Ciao.